It all started with a letter slipped into my mailbox, the kind of envelope that made your skin crawl the moment you touched it. White, heavy stock, embossed with the Oak Hills Homeowners Association seal that practically screamed self-importance. I didn't even have to open it to know it was from Linda Matthews, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, and a woman who took more pride in issuing citations than most people did in raising their own children. Linda had a vendetta against me for years. Maybe it was because I didn't trim my hedges to HOA standards, or because my dogs barked a little too loud at night. Or maybe, and this was most likely, it was because I refused to sell my family's ranch land to the developers she was in bed with. My property, nearly 100 acres of rough Texas soil and stubborn cedar fence lines, had stood long before Oak Hills became a neighborhood full of Pinterest-perfect homes and people who called themselves landowners just because they had a quarter-acre backyard with artificial turf. My ranch was the last rugged square on her map, and every time she sent me a letter, it felt like another shot in a war she was too proud to admit she started. This letter, though, wasn't the usual passive-aggressive drivel about mailbox paint or community harmony. No, this one came with an ultimatum. The perimeter fence surrounding your property has been deemed non-compliant with the Oak Hills architectural standards, it read. You have 14 days to remove or replace the structure to align with community expectations, or further action will be taken. I stared at the words for a long time, biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. That fence wasn't just wood and wire. It was the first thing my father built when he bought this land, post by post, in the dead of summer. His hands, bleeding and sunburned. It had held back cattle, coyotes, and once even a pair of drunk teenagers in a stolen Camry. It was the spine of this ranch, and now Linda Matthews wanted it gone because it didn't match her vision. The first thing I did was walk the fence line. I checked every post, ran my hand over the barbed wire, reinforced where I needed to. I didn't plan on taking it down. I planned on making it stronger. That same week, Linda started showing up more often. Her luxury SUV, black, spotless, probably, detailed twice a week, started making slow, creeping passes in front of my property. She'd stop at the gate, roll down her window, and just sit there, like she was daring me to come talk to her. I didn't. I just stood on my porch with a mug of coffee and stared right back. That must have driven her insane. Then came the notices, 5 in 1 week, one for unauthorized fencing, another for excessive dust from unpaved driveways. She even filed a complaint about my barn roof being an eyesore visible from the main road, even though that barn couldn't be seen unless you hovered in a drone 50 feet above the ground. She wasn't just trying to bend me. She was trying to break me. The final straw came when I caught her SUV parked just beyond my property line late at night. I saw the glint of headlights through the trees and crept down the trail with my flashlight off. Sure enough, there she was, standing near the corner fence post, holding a clipboard and shining a flashlight onto the wooden slats like she was collecting evidence. I made sure to snap a photo with my phone, her face illuminated in the beam, looking both self-righteous and smug. She didn't know I was watching. Not yet. That's when I decided if she was going to treat my land like her battleground, then I'd turn it into one. I didn't plan on hurting anyone. I'm not that kind of man. But I knew Linda had a habit of pushing boundaries, literally and figuratively, and I figured the day would come when she'd try to cross the line. So I prepared. I installed motion sensors along the north fence, hidden, quiet, connected to a set of solar-powered floodlights. I rigged the swing gate with a spring mechanism that would snap shut with a force strong enough to damage anything, stupid enough to plow through it. And just inside the entrance, I buried a strip of anti-tire spikes, the kind you could retract with a switch, but which sat waiting otherwise like teeth in the mouth of a wolf. Then I waited. For days, nothing happened. She drove by. She stared. But she didn't try anything. Until one afternoon when I was inside fixing a busted pipe under the kitchen sink, and I heard the unmistakable screech of tires on gravel followed by a loud metallic crunch. I bolted outside just in time to see her SUV halfway through my gate. The front end tilted downward, steam hissing from under the hood. One of the front tires had blown out completely, shredded like someone had taken a knife to it, and the spring-loaded gate had rebounded right into her grille, leaving a deep dent across the emblem. She was standing outside the vehicle, arms flailing, on her phone, yelling something into the speaker. When she saw me walking toward her, she pointed like I was the criminal. "You sabotaged this road. This is entrapment. I'll sue you into the ground!" she screamed, face redder than a fire truck. I didn't say anything. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and started recording. She didn't like that. "Turn that off! That's illegal!" she yelled, stepping forward. "You're going to pay for this, you hillbilly bastard!" I calmly pointed to the no trespassing sign that hung on the fence, bolted there long before her HOA even existed. "You passed 5 of those," I said. "This is private land. You entered without permission. The damage to your vehicle is on you." "You set a trap!" she shrieked, stomping her foot like a spoiled child. "You rigged this property like it's some damn war zone." I shrugged. "Funny. You keep treating it like it's yours. Now you know it's not." She called the sheriff. I didn't argue. I just sat on my porch, sipped my coffee, and waited for the deputies to show up. When they did, she ran up to them like a woman who had just escaped a kidnapping, arms flailing, voice cracking with self-righteous fury. "He's got spikes in the road! Spikes! This is an attempted murder, officer!" The sheriff, old Jack, Rowan, who'd known my family for 30 years, just nodded, walked past her and up to my porch. "You got cameras?" he asked. I nodded, handed him a USB drive. He plugged it into the laptop in his cruiser. A few minutes later, he walked back over to Linda and calmly told her she had no case, that she'd ignored multiple warning signs, drove through a closed gate, and trespassed onto private property with malicious intent. She lost her mind, screaming, threatening to call lawyers, promising to have my entire redneck operation shut down. But it didn't matter. Jack handed her a citation for trespassing and told her if she stepped foot on my land again, she'd be facing criminal charges. She drove away, slowly, in a borrowed tow truck, her busted SUV trailing behind like the world's saddest trophy. That night I sat on the porch, staring at the fence she hated so much, sipping the best damn whiskey I had in the house. Linda Matthews had made her play and lost, but something told me this wasn't over. Not yet. I should have known Linda Matthews wouldn't go down that easy. People like her, the ones who run meetings with iron fists and mistake fear for respect, they don't back off after one busted SUV and a trespassing citation. No, they double down. And that's exactly what she did. I found out 2 days after the incident when I drove into town for supplies and overheard 2 women gossiping at the feed store, whispering in that particular tone Oak Hills residents used when they thought their HOA president was fighting for the greater good. "She said the fence was dangerous," one said, leaning over a barrel of sunflower seed packets. "Can you believe he laid traps, literal traps, like we're living in some Vietnam jungle?" The other nodded solemnly. "She's rallying. The board said she's going to push for emergency powers to seize and renovate non-compliant land, for safety reasons." I didn't flinch, but inside my jaw tightened. Emergency powers? On what grounds? That woman would rather twist a law than admit she'd lost. I drove straight home and pulled the rest of my trail cam footage, every clip of her SUV pacing the fence line, every late-night visit. I backed it up in 3 places. If she wanted war, she was going to find out she'd picked a fight with someone who didn't flinch. That evening, a drone buzzed over my roof. At first, I thought it was just a hobbyist kid from the newer side of the neighborhood. But when the same drone came back the next day, hovering lower, taking long, slow passes over my pasture, I knew it was surveillance, Linda's kind of surveillance. I grabbed my scope, dialed it in, and made a mental note of the drone's make and model. Then I installed a jammer near the barn. The next morning, when the drone tried to circle again, it spiraled out of the sky like a wounded bird and landed in a patch of scrub grass near my tractor. I didn't smash it. I just stuck it in a Ziploc bag and labeled it Exhibit A. That was about when the letters started again. Certified mail this time. Official-sounding language. Threats of committee intervention. One of them accused me of sabotage with intent to intimidate. Another claimed my fence obstructed potential greenway development, and a third alleged that my land hosted unregistered livestock, which was hilarious, considering I only had 5 cows and 2 goats that had lived there longer than half the subdivision. Linda was throwing everything she could at the wall, hoping something would stick. She even sent a landscaper crew to my front gate under the pretense of performing mandated vegetation control. I met them with a printout of my property lines and a look that said I wasn't about to let anyone touch a blade of my grass without a court order. They left after 15 minutes and a few muttered apologies. But the pressure kept coming. I started getting calls from a real estate agent who claimed to represent an anonymous buyer offering well above market value for my ranch. When I said I wasn't selling, he doubled the offer, then tripled it. I hung up without another word. I knew exactly who that buyer was, and she was about to learn that some land isn't for sale, not at any price. That weekend, I went to the town records office and requested every zoning map, every land use permit, every HOA boundary document I could get my hands on. I spent hours cross-referencing plats and setbacks, highlighting pages, marking inconsistencies. Turns out, Oak Hills had overreached, badly. Somewhere in all their development greed, they'd drawn the boundary line too far and mistakenly included nearly a third of my property on their district improvement plan. That gave me a legal opening. I wasn't just on the defensive anymore. I was armed. I contacted a lawyer friend in Austin who specialized in rural land disputes. When I showed him the documents, his eyes lit up like he'd just spotted a fattened hog. "You've got them, stone cold," he said. "They've been operating under false boundaries for years. If they push this, we can bring civil action." I didn't care about a lawsuit. I didn't want money. I wanted Linda to know she'd messed with the wrong man. So I mailed the HOA board a cease and desist letter with my lawyer's signature at the bottom. No threats, just facts. Copies of the zoning maps, a timeline of Linda's trespassing, photos of the damaged gate, a full bound dossier of her violations. The silence afterward was deafening. For 2 weeks, not a single complaint came my way. Not a letter, not a drone, not even a drive-by. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally backed off. I was wrong. Linda doesn't lose. She lies in wait, and then she pounces. I found out the hard way one morning when I went out to check the southern fence and discovered the barbed wire had been cut clean in 3 places. Not chewed by animals, not rusted through, cut, surgical and deliberate. Next to the break, my private property sign had been spray-painted with the words community land. That's when I realized this wasn't about the fence anymore. This was personal. That afternoon, I called Jack Rowan again. He came out, looked at the damage, and scratched his chin like he was trying not to say something he'd regret. "She's playing dirty," he said finally. "I'll file it. But if she didn't leave fingerprints, it'll be your word against hers." I nodded, not because I accepted it, but because I already knew what I had to do next. I upgraded my cameras, higher resolution, better night vision. I put up solar-powered spotlights at the corners of my pasture. I installed 2 more retractable spike strips and linked them to my garage system. And then I waited again. It didn't take long. 4 nights later, I caught headlights sneaking down the dirt path that runs parallel to my fence. A vehicle, small, low, maybe a sedan, cut its engine and rolled to a stop. A figure got out. Flashlight in hand, clipboard again, the same posture, the same movements. It was Linda. I watched from the barn, camera rolling, heart pounding, slow and even like a drum beat. She stepped right over the sign that warned about security surveillance, walked to the fence, studied it like a surgeon about to make an incision. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a bolt cutter. That was enough. I hit the spotlight switch. A blinding cone of white light bathed her where she stood. She froze like a raccoon caught in headlights, eyes wide, face pale. Then she ran, full sprint. But she wasn't fast enough. Not this time. Jack had been parked a quarter-mile up the road, waiting like we planned. She ran right into his cruiser's lights. It was over in 30 seconds. She screamed about entrapment, about harassment, about conspiracies. She even claimed I'd staged the whole thing to discredit a public official. But Jack didn't say a word. Just cuffed her, read her rights, and put her in the back seat. Again. I watched the whole thing from my porch, rifle leaning against the post, heart calm. She didn't look back at me this time. She just stared ahead like a woman who'd finally realized she wasn't invincible. A week later, her resignation hit the news. HOA president steps down amid trespassing scandal. The board tried to spin it, claiming she'd been unwell and misguided, but the damage was done. Her face was plastered all over the community forum. Parents whispered, realtors sighed. And me? I replaced the busted signs, rebuilt the damaged gate, and sat on my porch with that same mug of coffee, staring at the land that was mine and would always be mine. The fence still stood, stronger than before, just like me.